Welcome to 10-Minute Counselor, your gateway to better mental health. Here's your host, David Bateman.
Hi everyone, my name is David Bateman and welcome to the 10-Minute Mental Health Podcast. I have already messed up about 6 takes on this because it is my first time actually recording a podcast. So what I'm planning on doing is making this a twice weekly podcast towards improving your mental health, your education about mental health, and hopefully bringing a little bit of perspective, but in a short period of time for people to be able to digest. Because I'm brand new at this is going to sound really awkward and terrible, okay? I'm just letting you know that ahead of time. There's probably going to be lots of ums and ahs and things where I stumble over my words. But the goal of today is to sort of let people know about something that I hear about very often in my office, which is, okay, I decided to start something new, and how do I do that? So very often people walk into my office and they will say, I know I need to change, and I have no idea how to start the process, okay? So the first question that always comes out of my mind when I talk to people about that, well, out of my mouth, actually not out of my mind, is, okay, is this something that you have to do, or is it something that you want to do? Usually it's some sort of improvement. I want to change an emotion that I have. I want to improve my relationship. I want to have less anger. I want to change the way that I relate to people. I want to have less shame. I want to control an addiction. Okay, these are all really common things that I hear on a week-to-week basis. But the question remains, do I have to do it or do I want to do it? And there's a slight difference between those two things. If I have to do it, usually it's coming from what we call an extrinsic source, which is something external to you. So my wife is going to leave me if I don't stop gambling. My boss is going to fire me if I don't stop drinking. My friends are going to stop talking to me if I don't stop being such a jerk. Okay, that is what we call extrinsic motivation. That can also come across as I want to get a better job. I want to make more money. I want to do certain things that are motivated by extrinsic sources because more often or not, we're influenced by the people around us. What I want to do is more from an intrinsic point of view. So that means it comes from inside me. It's something that deeper down I feel like I really want. And so the motivation changes slightly in terms that often, for example, if somebody is coming into my office and says, my wife told me to come see you, the way that I approach that is going to be very different from somebody that sits down and goes, man, I really need to change my marriage. There's a very subtle difference there, but it's very palpable, okay? And often people just don't know where to start. So my job as a registered counselor is to often probe into the motivation behind what they want to do first, and then start to figure out a path towards a solution. So once we've established, okay, this is what you want to do, the goal can sometimes be very specific or it can be very arbitrary. So for example, I want to be happy. Okay. Then we have to sit down and we have to discuss, what does happy mean? Let's define that. Or I want to have a better marriage. Okay, what does that look like? Does that mean, and let's get into specifics now, does that mean that I want a better marriage because I want to stop arguing with my wife? I want a better relationship with my kids. I want to have more sex. I want all of the above. And it can be all of the above, trust me. Or I want to feel a certain way, like I want to feel happy or I want to feel fulfilled. Okay, what does that look like? Let's really sit down and define that, because we need to get specific if we're going to start to move you towards something that's going to have an outcome. Okay? One practical tip that I give people right away is really trying to dive into the motivation behind what they're asking for. So why do I actually want to start this? And let's realize that honestly, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where the motivation comes from. It can come from outside or inside. But the end goal needs to also be defined. Okay? And that's where we get into specific things of what does happy look like? What does a good relationship look like? What does a better job look like? And often what I do is I get people to just start thinking about building that vision of where do I want to go? Because the tricky part is when you start something new, the saying goes, you begin with the end in mind. When you start something new, you need to have sort of an end goal, and it can't be super arbitrary. So it can't just be, I want to be happier. It has to be, I want to be able to walk into my house and not feel a sense of dread. Something like that is much more tangible and practical, and that's something we can wrap our heads around. So when we're mapping out something like that, the next step is to think about what's the vision, where do I want to go, and then what we start to do is we start to reverse engineer that back to the beginning. So what I'll often do with clients, and you can do this with yourself, is I will get them to sit down and say, okay, what does my life look like in 5 years? What does my life look like in a year? What type of environment do I want to be living in? Do I want a peaceful house? Do I want to be able to control my emotions? Do I want to be able to have a stable relationship? These are all things that we can reverse engineer, because then we start to look at the individual behaviors that are causing the issue in the moment. So for example, I want to reduce my anger because I'm being really reactive and it's starting to affect my work. Okay, great. The first thing that I get people to do is awareness. I get them to sit down, and every time they feel like a rise of anger, or maybe a flash of guilt or sadness, or whatever emotion they're trying to adjust, what I'll get them to do is just make a note of it. Just put a check mark in your phone or whatever you need to do in order to acknowledge that you just did that thing. Because what we need to look at from a mental point of view is what is causing that? And is there a common theme to it? Is there a person? Is there a phrase? Is there an environment that is causing that emotion to come bubbling out? And for me to become what we call reactive towards that emotion. The awareness is the first step towards that. So what we want to do is we want to record it every time it happens. And sometimes you'll sit there and you'll be making check marks all day because Phil from down the hall just drives you absolutely batty. Great. So now we have some information and we can improve this situation. So we may be able to manage Phil, or we may be able to manage how you react to Phil. And that sends us down a path towards completion of whatever the goal might be. Okay. My goal with this podcast is to provide weekly information for people to improve their lives and their mental health. And that's basically all my business runs around on a weekly basis. So that being said, with every episode, I'm going to try to provide some insight and some practical solutions towards improving whatever situation you might have. And there's going to be themes to episodes. It's going to be very clearly stated in the outline. But that being said, if there's ever anything you would like to see or hear about, then feel free to reach out. I will be on all the platforms. You can reach me at ottawamenscounseling@gmail.com. You can also find me on ottawamenscounseling.com. If you ever need help with mental health or advice, I invite you to reach out, because one thing I'll be talking about in the future is how often we don't do that enough. And I think that's something that really needs to change. I hope you enjoyed the information. If you did, feel free to like, subscribe, whatever it is on all the platforms. I don't actually know what I'm doing yet. So feel free to send me tips as well if you could. I would greatly appreciate it. And I hope that I can provide good information and help you along your day. Take care.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, share, and like. See you next time.